Most people believe they can talk about emotions in English because they know emotional vocabulary.
But in reality, knowing emotional words and controlling emotional language are two very different skills.
At an advanced level, emotions are not something you simply express. They are something you frame, interpret, and position through language.
That is why many fluent English speakers still sound vague, immature, or overly emotional, especially in academic or professional contexts.
Welcome to Marin English Lab. In this long-form lesson, we are not teaching you how to feel.
We are teaching you how to speak about emotions with clarity, control, and academic precision.
This lesson is designed for academic English learners, IELTS C1 to C2 candidates, professionals who need emotionally intelligent language, and most importantly, for learners who want their English to reflect how they think, not just how they feel. What emotions really are. Emotions are not raw feelings, they are interpreted experiences.
Let's begin with a fundamental question. What exactly is an emotion, from an academic perspective? Most learners answer with examples. Happy, sad, angry, nervous. But academically, this answer is incomplete.
In psychology and linguistics, emotions are understood as interpreted experiences, not raw reactions. An emotion involves perception of a situation, cognitive interpretation, personal or cultural evaluation. Only after these steps does a feeling become an emotion.
This explains why two people can experience the same event and describe completely different emotions. One might say, I felt excited. Another might say, I felt anxious. The event is identical. The interpretation is not.
This distinction is critical for advanced English learners, because language does not encode emotions directly. It encodes how we interpret emotions. When learners rely only on basic emotional labels, they skip the most important layer: meaning construction.
And this is where academic English begins. Academic emotional language asks, why did you feel this way? What caused it? How did it develop over time? What impact did it have? Not, what word can I use? But, what idea am I expressing?
Another common issue is confusion between emotion, mood, attitude. These are not interchangeable. Let's clarify.
Emotion is usually short-term and event-related. Frustration, relief, anxiety. Mood is longer-lasting and less specific. Low mood, positive mood. Attitude is evaluative and cognitive. Skeptical, supportive, dismissive.
In academic and professional English, misusing these categories leads to imprecision. For example, I was emotional about the policy. I held a negative attitude toward the policy. This difference alone can significantly affect IELTS scores, academic clarity, professional credibility.
Many learners say, native speakers sound calm when they talk about emotions. This is not because they feel less. It is because they conceptualize emotions, distance emotions linguistically, and frame emotions cognitively.
They don't suppress emotions. They structure them. And structure is exactly what academic English rewards. One of the biggest misconceptions in learning emotional English is the belief that vocabulary works as a list. Learners often think, if I know more emotional words, I can express myself better. But this is only partially true.
In reality, emotional vocabulary functions as a system, not as isolated items. Words like angry, upset, annoyed, or furious do not simply mean more or less the same thing. They operate along multiple dimensions.
In academic linguistics, emotional vocabulary can be analyzed through at least 4 key dimensions: intensity, duration, cause, control. Understanding these dimensions is what separates advanced speakers from fluent but basic speakers. Let's examine each one carefully.
Intensity refers to the strength of an emotion. Compare these words: annoyed, irritated, angry, furious. They belong to the same emotional family, but they are not interchangeable.
In academic English, misuse of intensity can make a speaker sound exaggerated, emotionally unstable, or linguistically careless. For example, I was furious when the meeting started late. I was mildly irritated when the meeting started late. The second sentence demonstrates emotional awareness, proportional response, linguistic maturity.
Another overlooked factor is duration. Some emotions are sudden and brief. Others are persistent and evolving. Compare: surprised short-lived, resentful long-term, anxious ongoing, alarmed immediate.
Duration is particularly important in academic writing, reflective speaking, IELTS Task 2 or Part 3. For example, I was stressed because of one email. I felt momentarily stressed after receiving the email. Adding duration markers refines meaning, adds precision, signals higher level control.
Beginner learners focus on what they feel. Advanced learners explain why they feel it. This is the cause dimension.
Academic English favors emotions that are contextualized, justified, causally explained. Compare: I felt anxious. I felt anxious due to the uncertainty surrounding the outcome. The second sentence externalizes the emotion, shifts focus from self to situation, aligns with academic style.
This dimension is rarely taught, but it is crucial in professional and academic contexts. Control refers to emotional regulation, self-awareness, restraint in expression.
Consider the difference. Overwhelmed, concerned. Both may describe stress, but concern implies a higher level of control. In academic or workplace English, control is often valued more than intensity.
Let's now reframe emotional vocabulary. Instead of learning synonyms, think in terms of emotional families. For example, the fear family: uneasy, anxious, apprehensive, fearful, terrified. These words differ in intensity, duration, control.
This is why synonym lists alone are dangerous. Two words may appear similar in a dictionary, but behave very differently in real discourse.
In academic speaking, emotional words often serve a positioning function. They tell the listener how serious the issue is, how rational the speaker is, how much distance the speaker maintains.
For instance, I strongly disagree versus I find the argument unconvincing. Both express disagreement. Only one sounds academic.
Let's look at a common IELTS Part 3 question. How do people usually feel when they fail? A basic answer might be: they feel sad and disappointed. An advanced academic response could be:
people often experience disappointment initially, followed by frustration, especially if they believe the failure was avoidable. Notice emotional sequencing, cause-effect reasoning, controlled vocabulary. This is not about emotion. It is about structured thought.
At this stage, one thing should be clear. Advanced emotional English is not expressive. It is analytical.
And once you see emotional vocabulary as a system, you stop asking, what word should I use? And start asking, what meaning am I constructing? In everyday conversation, emotions often appear spontaneously. But in academic and professional spoken English, spontaneity is not the goal.
The goal is clarity. When emotions are not structured in speech, listeners may perceive the speaker as impulsive, subjective, or lacking analytical depth.
This is especially true in academic presentations. IELTS Speaking Part 3. Professional meetings. Interviews. In these contexts, emotions must be organized, not simply expressed.
One of the most effective academic techniques is emotional sequencing. This means describing emotions across time. Instead of stating, "I felt stressed," you structure the experience.
A typical academic sequence includes initial reaction, emotional development, resolution or reflection. Let's look at an example.
Unstructured. I was nervous during the presentation. Structured. Initially, I felt slightly anxious before the presentation. However, as I became more familiar with the topic, I gradually felt more confident. The second version demonstrates emotional awareness, progression, cognitive control.
Academic speakers rarely place emotions at the center of a sentence. Instead, they frame emotions using linguistic markers. Common framing expressions include I tend to feel, I was somewhat, I experienced a degree of, there was a sense of.
These markers do three important things: reduce emotional intensity, increase objectivity, signal academic maturity. Compare. I was very angry about the decision. I experienced a degree of frustration regarding the decision. Hedging is a core academic skill. It allows speakers to soften statements, avoid overgeneralization, maintain professional distance. This applies to emotions as well.
Common emotional hedges include somewhat, relatively, to a certain extent, rather. For example, I was somewhat disappointed by the outcome. This sounds more measured than I was extremely disappointed.
Another academic shift involves how emotions are positioned. Basic speakers say, I am anxious. Advanced speakers say, I felt anxious in response to.
This linguistic shift separates emotion from identity, reduces subjectivity, emphasizes cause and context. In academic English, emotions are responses, not personal traits. Advanced speakers often use contrast to clarify emotions. For example, although I was initially concerned, I later became more optimistic.
Contrast signals reflection, emotional regulation, intellectual maturity. It shows that emotions are processed, not simply reacted to. Another overlooked skill is pacing. Academic speakers pause before emotional statements. Use transitional phrases. Slow down emotionally loaded content.
This pacing improves listener comprehension, increases perceived confidence, enhances authority. In spoken academic English, how you say something matters as much as what you say. At this point, one idea should be clear. In academic English, emotions are not a problem to be avoided. They are data to be interpreted.
When emotions are treated as raw reactions, they often weaken communication. But when emotions are treated as information, they strengthen reasoning.
Let's now connect everything we have explored in this lesson. Academic emotional language operates across three levels: awareness, recognizing emotional responses; structure, organizing emotions through language; positioning, embedding emotions into meaning and evaluation.
This progression mirrors academic thinking itself. We do not jump from feeling to conclusion. We move from experience, interpretation, articulation. Many learners ask, why does advanced English sound calm, even when discussing serious topics? The answer is not vocabulary. It is distance.
Advanced speakers create distance by shifting from I feel to this suggests, replacing reaction with reflection, prioritizing meaning over emotion. This distance is not coldness. It is intellectual control.
One of the most powerful aspects of this skill is that it transfers across all topics. Whether you are discussing education, technology, mental health, social change, work and leadership, the same emotional framework applies.
This means you are not learning emotional English for one test or one situation. You are learning a way of thinking in English, how to practice independently.
To develop this skill further, practice in 3 deliberate steps. Step 1. Replace emotion with evaluation. Ask yourself, what does this emotion say about the situation? Step 2. Add structure. Use sequencing, contrast, cause and effect. Step 3. Reduce intensity. Ask, can I express this idea more calmly, more precisely? This practice is far more effective than memorizing emotional vocabulary lists.
At an advanced level, language becomes part of identity. The way you talk about emotions tells others how you think, how you reason, how you engage with complexity. Academic English is not about sounding intelligent. It is about being intelligible under pressure.
Everyone experiences emotions, but not everyone can explain them clearly.
And clarity is what transforms emotion into insight. At Marin English Lab, we don't teach English as isolated skills. We teach English as a thinking system.
Because real fluency is not about speaking more. It is about saying exactly what you mean, with control, confidence, and depth.
If you found this lesson useful, return to it slowly. Academic English is not learned quickly. It is built deliberately.
Thank you for learning with us.